Shalom Chavrim, welcome to lesson 35 of Learning Biblical Hebrew, and we continue through Genesis chapter 2, and we're following the fortunes of Adam, the first man, and he now has his suitable helper, and we'll see what happens to them next. Genesis 2:24. Al Kain yarezav ish eth aviv u'eth imo ודבק באשתו והיו לבשר אחד. So, Al Kain, let's look at our translation here. So, word by word, the first approximation is upon this. He leaves the man, or just his man, Ish. Yes, we came across this other word for man in the last lesson, didn't we? I forgot to comment on it then, because previously we'd had Adam for man, but the last lesson introduced Ish, and because it goes with the word Isha, woman. Qazav Ish, so there we have verb and subject. A man leaves. Object, marker, Aviv, his father, father his, and object, mother, imo, mother his, udavak, and he clings or sticks, in ishto. So isha changes, the H at the end changes to a T when it takes the suffix at the end. In wife his, and hayu, and they are two basar echad. So this is the common way of saying they become one flesh. So Al Kain, upon this, or so we could say, this being so, I've written therefore. A man leaves his father and his mother and joins with his wife, and the two are coupled. So I'll talk more about that translation in a minute. But first we notice the two slightly different forms of his, going with the two different nouns. You can see that on page 4 in the middle column of our little sheet of Hebrew forms. And here's an interesting little thing here, which I'll now comment on. In English we often have these little words called prepositions that follow verbs. For example, agree with someone, insist on something, tire of someone, fill in a form, and so on. And in these cases the prepositions don't necessarily have the exact meaning that they have when they stand alone or in other uses of them. So here's an interesting thing, that davak is followed by but it doesn't necessarily mean sticking in something. But is used with davak and talking about Ruth determinedly staying with her mother-in-law. That's Ruth chapter 1 verse 14. However, Biblical Hebrew does use 3 other prepositions with davak besides b. So I'm left wondering if the choice of b here is intentionally explicit or not. Anyway, we'll leave that aside for a minute, and because we go on to the next one, hayu lebasar echad, and we've had this idiom before. They are two, one flesh. That's a way of saying they become one flesh. And we note that basar can mean flesh, so like meat. It can also mean skin, and it can also mean genitals, male or female. So again, this is looking pretty explicit. And I believe in fact that, although some modern Protestant commentators deny it, but I believe, it seems to me, that Genesis 2:24 is an unashamed picture of sexual intercourse. The Bible is not a book for prudes. And only secondarily, it has the secondary idea of union in more than just a physical sense. Paul picks up these two senses in 1 Corinthians 6:16. So, yeah, as typical in Hebrew, there is more than one sense here. Because also basar can mean kin. So I believe that there are three senses in this phrase. One is it's an unashamed picture of sexual intercourse between the man and his wife. Secondly, it's talking about their union in a broader sense. And thirdly, because basar can also mean kin, it's saying they become like one kin, the closest kin. And we talked about this in a previous lesson about the twin bananas, the conjoined twin bananas. So that gets us to, again, the choice of English word for here. If I'm going to translate it, which of these senses do we go for? Well, trying to be a little bit diplomatic perhaps and look at it from a broader picture, I actually Googled for synonyms words like joined, and you get things like, where did I write them down? Joined, fused, merged, or coupled. So in the end I chose coupled. The two are coupled. Every choice has its good points and its bad points, but since we talk in English about becoming a couple, and so I mentioned the two are coupled. And again, if you use your imagination a little bit, you can perhaps see those other meanings that I've referred to coming out of this word coupled. So there we have it. Okay, so let's just step back now to here. Razav ish, the man leaves. It doesn't have to mean a sense of go away and live in another place. That wasn't normal Hebrew custom anyway. But it means that you kind of had a new priority in your life. But yeah, this is quite a strong statement. And Wenham, in his word biblical commentary, makes the comment, in traditional societies like Israel, where honouring parents is the highest human obligation, the remark about leaving them is striking. And this is typical of Eastern cultures, which talk about filial duties. Filial, from the Latin word meaning son. Obviously it's a very big thing in Chinese culture as well, and pretty much throughout Asia. And in traditional societies in Western countries as well. It's only modern Western countries that these ties kind of loosen and these obligations are no longer felt as strongly as they once were. But we have to remember that these words come right out of a traditional Eastern culture, and so as Wenham comments, this is quite a striking thing here, that the man has the obligation to leave his father and his mother and couple with his wife, and what I've written here, joins with his wife, and the two are coupled. So we can see each of these words as having perhaps more than one meaning, including meanings that perhaps people don't think about when these verses are read with a straight-faced and a monotone voice in front of a packed congregation, or a half-empty congregation in a half-asleep church. These words are a little more, yes, frank and plain speaking than especially nicely expressed versions like the King James Version tend to make them up. So anyway, there I leave it with you there, and I leave those words for you to ponder. And I ask the question, what do you make of this verse? I'm still thinking about it, just how explicit was the writer intending to be. So let me know if you have any interesting ideas or insights.